Worship, Encountering the Risen Christ. This is video number 8 out of 12. Chapter 7, The Sanctoral Cycle. Sanctoral refers to sanctity, holiness, and sanctification, being made holy. Those believed to have been fully sanctified were called saints. The sanctoral cycle is a calendar meant to celebrate the lives of our saints. But you may say, Protestants don't have saints. Yet a quick online search will give us these results. St. Francis Episcopal Church, St. James Baptist Church, St. John's Lutheran Church, St. Paul's Moravian Church, John Knox Presbyterian Church, John Wesley African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, Francis Asbury United Methodist Church, etc. Of course Protestants have saints. Consider this hymn. Rejoice in God's saints, today and all days. A world without saints forgets how to praise. Hymn number 708 in the United Methodist Hymnal. There are plenty of secular saints in our lives too. We call these role models, or heroes and heroines, even idols. As human beings, we need persons whom we can admire. For Christians, they should be chosen from the examples of godly living that abound in our history. The sanctoral calendar is a helpful way of keeping worthy mentors before the Christian people. Men and women do not, by sheer determination and self-discipline, become saints. Sanctity is a divine gift. God creates saints. It is the resurrection power at work in our lives. To commemorate some saints is another way of affirming that the transformative power of Christ is at work all around us in human lives. By contemplating high-profile persons, we are better able to identify that transforming work in those we meet every day, or challenge us to rise up. Saint is not limited to the greats of history. The New Testament uses the term synonymously with Christian or believer. Paul addresses all the members of the Corinthian church as saints. By this, we find hope for ourselves. We are saints because God's holiness is at work in us, not because we have come to some great spiritual attainment on our own. It is no service to God to depict the great Christians of the ages as if they had no weaknesses. I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. From 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. This is the definition of sanctity as we see it in the sanctoral cycle. My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. From 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. Whenever possible, a holy person is given the date in the calendar that corresponds to the day of that person's death, not the day of birth. Although death day has been understood as the day of birth into eternity. Sanctoral calendars vary widely from denomination to denomination, and even from country to country. There is an agreed upon core based on the people we meet in the Bible. They are listed before you. The United Methodist Church now offers their own version of a sanctoral cycle that expands upon these historic observances with saints associated with her own Wesleyan Methodist heritage. The publication, For All the Saints, a calendar of commemorations for United Methodists, offers an annual schedule of feast days to reflect upon the lives that have contributed in special ways to our unique legacy. Among the many names listed in this book are the 4 Wesleys most central to our heritage, who are recognized on these dates. A willingness to die for the faith was so ultimate a proof of faithfulness that candidates on the path toward baptism in the ancient church who had died in martyrdom were regarded as having been baptized in their own blood. Please pause this video to reflect longer on question 81. One of the days of greatest importance is the day immediately after the birth of Jesus. Who would be a better pick than Stephen, the first believer recorded to have laid down his life for his faith, as recounted in Acts chapter 6, verse 5 through chapter 8, verse 2. What about December 27th? Ought it not go to the one the fourth gospel says was particularly loved by Jesus, the only one who did not desert Jesus as the crucifixion approached? And so it is, John. What about December 28th? Here, the young males who were slaughtered by order of King Herod after the Magi had come inquiring about the birth of a Messiah were given a special honor. They are unintended martyrs, the holy innocents. We, too, serve a purpose for God. All Saints' Day. Given the widespread persecution in the early centuries, it did not take long for each of the 365 days to be assigned to one, and then to several saints, or martyrs. Eventually, a problem developed and a solution arose. Designate one day each year as a kind of catch-all occasion, a day on which to commemorate all the saints who could not be given their own dates, and whose names have been lost to history. This All Saints' Day settled down to November 1st. For Catholics, officially canonized saints are recognized on November 1st. All other faithful departed are remembered on November 2nd, called All Souls' Day. Protestants have typically collapsed the two into one. For Protestants, All Saints' Day is less about the great historic figures of the Church and more about people we ourselves have known and revered. Protestants usually observe this date on the first Sunday of November and include reading of the names of all in the congregation who have died in the past year. Memorial gifts in their honor may also be dedicated on this occasion. Often, those still grieving the death of a loved one can begin to work through their grief by hearing the resurrection hope with greater clarity on this day. The All Saints observance is a time when all can reflect on and give thanks for deceased persons who have been influential in their spiritual formation and growth. As a result, all are reminded of the influence our lives can have upon others. This, in turn, may strengthen our resolve to lead lives worthy of imitation, to open ourselves more fully to the sanctifying power of God. On this Sunday, candles are lit in memory of loved ones who have died in the past year. Sometimes their names are included in a necrology, or list of the dead, and called aloud in the midst of the service. Sometimes a memorial bell will ring in response to each name. All Saints also emphasizes the unity of the church across time. If you want to know the size of the church, you have to count the headstones, says G.K. Chesterton. All Saints can be a way to pull together themes from the entire liturgical calendar. The work of resurrection grace in all of God's people, the devotion and discipline needed in the life obedient to God, the holiness of our humanity in the incarnation of divinity, the connectedness of all believers, the hope of life beyond death. It is all here, for the heart of the gospel, after all, is about God grasping us in such a way as to transform sinners into saints. This calendar enables us to live and die more readily as the people of God. The church year, the life and times of Christ. By observing the life and times of Christ year in and year out, we make our own pilgrim journey, not as if walking in circles on the same plot of ground, but as if ascending a spiral staircase. As we begin to go around again, it may seem like we are in the same place. Here we go again, we sigh, a revolving madness with no end. But gradually it dawns on us that always we see where we have been from a greater height, and by virtue of the increasing elevation, we can look farther across the landscape of faith to gain a better perspective on God's gracious design and on our place within it. Thereby we come to believe more confidently, Lord's Day by Lord's Day, and from Pasch to Pasch, that we too will be numbered with the saints in glory everlasting. Please answer questions 84 and 85 before reading chapter 8. This is the end of the reading for Session 2. Session 2 covers chapters 4 through 7, or videos number 5 through 8. Please answer the following 4 questions about your reading for Session 2.